how do you choose which conferences or professional development activities you're going to attend in any given year? Well, today, my friends, we are talking about 10 tips for choosing a conference or professional development event. And this is episode number 230 of the In a Weekend podcast. I'm your host, Young Pratt, and I want to thank you for taking time out of your day to be here to talk about this idea of how do you choose? There is no shortage of conferences, whether they are online or in person. So how do you wade through all the different opportunities to find the ones that are going to be best for you and your business? So today we have 10 tips to help you choose your next conference. Tip number 1, when you're considering conferences and where you're going to go, you want to consider your goals. Are you in the market to learn a new skill? Are you in the market to get refreshed and re-energized and reinvigorated for a new year in your business? Are you looking to really have lots of opportunities to network with people? These are all factors when you consider the goals. What do you want to accomplish at the conference? And once you consider your goals and know what they are, you'll be able to weed through the opportunities that are presented to you in a better way. Next week, Sophie and I are headed to Podcast Movement in Orlando. It is a conference that I have been wanting to go to for quite some time, yet just have not made it a priority because of lots of different factors. And when we reach the end of our 10 tips, you'll understand why I'm going this year and how it all came into being a reality for us. So tip number 1, think about the goals. What do you hope to accomplish by attending a conference? If you're going in with wanting to learn a new skill versus wanting to maybe network, they could be two different types of conferences. So think about that. Tip number 2 is the cost. When I was looking at conferences online in preparation for this episode, the cost of conferences runs the gamut from really low or free events all the way to thousands of and tens of thousands of dollars to attend them. So the cost of your conference is something you want to consider. And wrapped up in the cost, of course, are things like transportation and food and lodging. So often, unless the event happens to be local to you, you're going to have to be traveling, whether by car or by air. And those are actually going to add to your costs as well. So really consider that. Tip number 2 is consider the cost. Number 3, which is related to number 2, is the location. Where the conference is being held may be a factor. Is it going to be difficult to travel there? I know that I have not gone to conferences in the past because living in a small town, getting anywhere requires multiple flights and sometimes multiple days. So a couple years ago, I had a conference I could have attended in the Caribbean. However, based on the tickets I could get, it would take me like 2.5 days just to get there, same on the way back, and I just couldn't be gone or didn't really want to be gone, especially traveling overnight somewhere and staying in airports. So for me, the location was definitely a consideration, and in the end, I did not go to that conference because it was not convenient to get there. So location plays a big factor. Is it close? Can you drive? Do you have to fly? There's lots of variables in deciding if a location is going to be suitable for you. Number 4, what is the length of the conference? Is it a single day conference? Is it multiple days? And when you're considering the length, there are factors, especially if you're a mom or a parent, like childcare, if your kids are not going to go with you. Is your spouse or significant other going to stay with your child? Do they need care during the day or just in the evenings? So the length really comes into play when considering what's going to happen with the rest of your family. Sophie and I are actually going to be gone for a whole week when we go to Podcast Movement next week. And because my youngest is older now, she's 13, she can definitely stay home by herself. But rather, she's actually going to stay with my mom, and they're going to go on a little mini trip of their own because my husband works all day throughout the week. So I really didn't want her to be sitting at home all day by herself for that length of time. So to grandma's it is. And like I said, they're going to have a little mini adventure and travel on their own as well. The next thing to consider is, who do you know that's going to be there? Are you flying there and not knowing anyone at the conference? Or will you go there and meet a friend or meet someone in real life that you've met online? That can definitely change how you experience an event if you go solo, not knowing anyone, versus having a little more comfort in knowing someone who's going to be there that you can enjoy conferences with, chat with. And so when you're considering choosing a conference, definitely who is going to be there is a really important decision. Some people like going into situations where they don't know anybody and can really just go from ground zero and go from there. Other people, like myself, I like to go to these events knowing that I might know at least one person, just so that I can chat with them or connect with them at some point to discuss the experience or, celebrate getting to meet in real life over a drink or something like that. Next consideration is the speakers. Is it an event where there are multiple speakers, or is there one main speaker? Again, depending on number 1, your goals, looking at the speakers and their bios and finding out what they're bringing to the table and if you want to learn from them is definitely a real consideration. Going to Podcast Movement, I know there's some really big names in the podcast world that are going to be there and speaking, and there are lots of people who I have not heard of yet, but I'm really looking forward to getting to know and hearing what they have to say based on what I've learned so far about them and their presentations. So finding out who is speaking and how many speakers there are is really something to consider before choosing the conferences you're going to attend. And then next is the topics. Again, all of these relate back to number 1, the goals. Are these topics specific to your niche? Are they skill specific? Maybe you are a crafter and it's something in relation to a particular type of craft and how you might do it. Is it going to be something that's outside of your niche that's going to help your business, like a social media conference, or in my case, a podcasting conference? As a longtime podcaster, I'm looking forward to going because I really want to find out what is up and coming in the world of podcasting, find out what's working, and then come back here and share all those insights with you. And yes, I will be doing an episode post-event to tell you my top takeaways from Podcast Movement. So as you're planning for next year, perhaps Podcast Movement may be a conference you want to put on your list. The next consideration is the format. I've been to all sorts of conferences, and some of them are like lectures in a college classroom where one person gets on stage and talks at you for all day, for a long frame of time, and there may or may not be a Q&A session at the end. That is one type of experience. Another are little workshops. Can you go in and learn a practical skill in a short time and walk away with something new? Is it a roundtable discussion where people talk about a particular thing that they're wanting to focus on? Maybe they're having a challenge and there's a breakout session or a roundtable where multiple people are sharing their experiences with that particular challenge. All of these are factors when you're considering a conference because we all learn differently. I know for me, when I go to a conference, I like to learn from different people and like to learn different things, but I know there's a limit to what my brain and what my body can really take in any given day. So the idea for me of going to listen to somebody who's going to talk at me the whole day is not nearly as enticing as going to a conference where there are multiple speakers, maybe multiple classrooms, where I can pick and choose what's going to be best for me on that day, depending on the goals I go into the conference with. Number 9, what are the networking opportunities before, during, and after the event? When we decided to go to Podcast Movement, there actually is a closed group for people who have attended in the past and who are attending, giving me an opportunity to connect with people who are going to be there. We're actually going in a day early so we can go experience some fun things and just have a day of play while we're in Orlando, because it's not a location we would normally consider going, especially with just the two of us. So we wanted to make sure we put play in there before the event started because it's a weekday and I just felt better about doing that. And this group gave me an opportunity to connect with people who are also going to be there early, to hang out with them for a little bit pre-event, and to really make some new friends that are podcasters as well, because we have that in common. So that automatically connects us to one another. At the event, I know every night we have a party of some sort hosted by one of the sponsors. It's just another opportunity to connect with the attendees outside of the learning environment on a more social level, on a more relational level. So that's a plus. And then, of course, afterwards, we can connect with one another, anyone that we meet on social media, within the Podcast Movement group, and beyond. So really think about the opportunities you're going to have for the networking, because I consider networking almost as important as really the goals of what I'm going to learn about. I really want to be able to connect with others in my field and really have somebody to walk this journey with, because if you're an entrepreneur, especially if you're a solopreneur, maybe just starting out, it can feel a little lonely and feel like you're the only one facing certain challenges or having certain thoughts. So knowing that there's someone else out there who's in your same industry or something related is definitely nice to be able to really build the idea of relationships into going to conferences. And number 10 is be open. Remember at the beginning, I had said that Podcast Movement was something I had considered going to many times. I just, for one reason or another, just never really chose to go. Well, this year we were invited by Hanny Mora, who is the software developer of my favorite piece of software, which is Repurpose. If you have listened to the podcast for some time, you already know that. It's my go-to tool to automate my podcast and beyond. And I'll put a link in the show notes of today's episode at yongpratt.com/230. So you can find out more about why I love it and what it can do for you. Plus, you'll get a trial for that software as well. Well, he invited me to attend this conference with him and sit at his table. So we're not going in as attendees per se, we're going in as a vendor, which is an interesting perspective because we're going to have a booth there and people are going to come up and ask questions. And being a longtime user, and again, because it's my favorite piece of software, I really wanted to show up and be there for Hanny and give him a hand because his software has really impacted my life in such a positive way. And I just want to pay it forward to other people, let them know about my experiences in the hopes that they will also become converts and fans of Repurpose because it is just awesome. So my friends, those are the top 10 tips I have for you when you are considering which conferences or professional development activities you want to attend this year. And I would encourage you to attend at least one every year, whether it's online or in person. Going to events has a way of opening up our eyes and showing us different perspectives we may not have considered. So let me, before we wrap up this episode, go through my top 10 tips for helping you to choose which conferences and professional development activities you may want to attend. Number 1, what are your goals? Number 2, what is the cost to attend? Number 3, where is the conference being held? 4, how long is the conference? Who is going to be there that you know that you can connect with? Or are you going in not knowing anyone? Who is speaking at the event? Are they people you want to learn from and are interested in learning more about? If so, that may be a conference that goes on your list. What are the topics that are going to be covered? And are they going to benefit you and your business in the long run? Number 8, what type of format? Is it a lecture? Is it a roundtable? Is it a breakout session? Is it a workshop? Take all those into consideration and pair them with your goals so you can choose the most appropriate conferences for you. Number 9, what are the opportunities to network with other attendees? And of course, number 10, be open to opportunities that you maybe hadn't thought about, but get invited to attend, like for Podcast Movement and Sophie and I attending and helping at the Repurpose booth at the expo. All right, my friends, if you have more tips on how you go about choosing conferences or workshops for yourself, let me know so we can continue the discussion. And you can always head over to the show notes of this page, yongpratt.com/230, and we can continue the conversation over there. Next week on the podcast, we're going to talk about changes coming here on the podcast and with the business. I'm super excited to share with you what is coming up because, again, there are things coming up down the road quickly that I never could have imagined had I not had this podcast and had I not had an opportunity to connect with all of you. So look forward to that. I will catch you next time. And until then, have an amazing day. Cheers, my friends.